I have gone coffee filter crazy. I made coffee filter roses, I made coffee filter hydrangeas, and someone asked me, can you make sunflowers? Well, the answer is yes. And I want to show you how I made some beautiful, realistic coffee filter sunflowers using coffee filters and tissue paper. I think that I might make my whole fall bouquet on my dining room table out of coffee filter flowers. But let me show you how I made these beautiful pieces. To make these flowers, I'm using a pack of white and a pack of natural colored coffee filters. I'm using watercolor paint. For a different version, I'm using colored tissue paper, a soft green wire tie that I got from the hardware store for gardening, a little Mod Podge, and the hot glue gun. I'm going to start by making the center of my flower. I'm going to use this natural coffee filter, and I'm going to take about 6 sheets. Then I'm going to fold those in half and then fold it in half one more time. Then I'm going to use my scissors to cut little slits all the way across the top of this piece, about a 1/2 inch in. The cuts are really close together. Now I'm going to brush my fingers across the top to fan them out and separate the pieces. Now I'm going to unfold it once and loosely roll the paper around in on itself to make a cone shape so that it looks like this. And then I'm going to just put a little hot glue on the edges to close it up. The center of the sunflower is indented, so I'm just going to use my fingers and smash in the pieces in the center and make a nice little round indentation. I made a couple of these and I'm going to paint them now with a dark brown watercolor paint. A few of you have asked if you could use watercolors to paint your coffee filter flowers, so I decided to use watercolors instead of the food coloring to show you how this would turn out. So for this one, I'm painting the center a dark brown, and then I'm brushing the brown on the outside just lightly so it's a different tone. But you can do the opposite. You could make the inside light brown or green. Sometimes it looks green in the center, and then the outside darker brown. I'm going to try it both ways to see how it turns out. After you paint the pieces for the center, you can let those sit and air dry, or you could stick them in the oven at 350 for a few minutes to dry. But while that's drying, I'm going to make the petals for my flowers. I'm using 3 sheets of white coffee filters, and I'm going to fold them in half and then fold them in half again, and then I'm going to fold 2 more times. 4 folds all together. Now I'm going to draw a sunflower petal shape, something like this, and I'm going to use this as a guide to cut my petals. I'm also going to make a cut at the bottom 1/4 of the piece. Now I'm going to open the petals up, and sometimes you'll get a few of the petals linked together. You want to just cut those apart. And before I completely open it, I like to bend the tips of the flowers to give it more of a petal shape. Now I'm going to open these up completely and then separate each layer. Then I'm going to lay each layer on top of one another and rotate it so that the petals do not line up. And then I'm going to take one of my center flowers and gently push it through the holes of the petals. Now I'm going to move the petals out of the way so that I can put some hot glue just right at the tip, at the edge of the centerpiece. Try not to get hot glue on the top, but you want it just around the side top edges of the centerpiece. And then I'm going to push those petals up. I'm going to turn it sort of upside down and then push the petals forward. The petals on the sunflowers grow right upward out from the centerpiece. So I want to make sure the petals are facing upward. And then I'm going to use the hot glue to just glue the other layers upward too. I'm just going to go around and turn it upside down and just glue some of the pieces so that they're all facing upward. And be careful of your hand, the hot glue is hot, so just sort of pat it down. And then you can go around and curl some of the petals down and upward and bend some of the edges to make it look more realistic. And you'll have a pretty white sunflower. Now if you want to make some colored sunflowers, here are two options. You can take a bowl with a little bit of water in it, enough to cover some coffee filters, and squeeze a little watercolor paint. I'm using this yellow red. Mix that up really well. And then soak a small stack of coffee filters in a diluted paint water. Let it soak well for a few minutes and then put it out on a cookie sheet. I'm going to squirt out a little orange, and I'm going to use the orange to paint in the center of the coffee filter. I'm going to brush that outward because I want my flowers to go from orange in the center to yellow. And I'm going to turn that over and do the same thing so that the orange will soak through and sort of bleed out to this nice gradation. I think I'm going to put some more yellow on the edges. I also want to make some leaves for my sunflowers, so I'm going to mix a nice dark green and soak some coffee filters in the green. I'll put those in the oven at 350 to dry for about a half an hour. And when they come out, they look like this. They dry a lot lighter than the colors that go in. So you need to take that into account. And after folding, cutting, and putting together a sunflower with the watercolor dyed sheets, you get something that looks like this. Another quicker option you can try instead of dyeing the coffee filters is to use colored tissue paper. I'm using this bright yellow tissue paper that's used for wrapping. And I'm going to take one sheet. I'm going to fold that in half and then fold it in half again. And then I'm going to fold it into a triangle shape, and another triangle, and then another triangle. I'm going to cut this into an ice cream cone shape so that it's similar to the coffee filters after it's been folded. Now I'm going to fold it one more time so that I could cut the petal shapes out of this piece. And you just do the same thing you did for the coffee filter. Cut it, then fold the edges, cut a little hole at the bottom, and then separate them and alternate them so that the petals don't line up. Then you're going to glue that to the centerpiece. And then you have a bright yellow sunflower without having to paint or dye your pieces. You can also use different colored tissue. To get that orange to yellow petal look, put down a layer of orange petals. I'm going to glue that down really low on the flower first. And then I'm going to glue down 3 levels of yellow petals higher up so that the petals are longer. And it sort of gives me a bright gradated look. Now to make the little green leaves that are attached to the bottom of the head of the flower, I'm going to use this green tissue paper and fold it the same way I did the yellow paper, but when I get to this point, instead of cutting out a cone shape, I'm going to cut the triangle in half because I want these leaves to be shorter. Then I'll cut a cone shape and fold that in half and cut out little leaf shaped petals. And after you open those up, you'll get something that looks like this. Now we'll only need 2 of these per flower. So I'm going to take my flower and turn it upside down and cut the bottom half of the flower off, all the way down to where the yellow begins. I'm putting a little hot glue around the bottom and the sides of the flower, and I'm just going to lightly tap the green leaves on top and on the sides of the flower. Then I'm going to alternate and glue down another level of petals. And I'm also curling and bending some of these petals down to make them look more realistic. To make a stem, I'm using this soft green wire I picked up from Ace. I cut a long piece and I'm going to gently poke it into the center of the bottom of the flower. I'm going to take that out and pipe some hot glue in the center and then put the stem back in so that it'll stay in place. Now I'm going to use a little Mod Podge on the stem to blend in the stem with the flower. I'm going to cut pieces of my green leaf petals and just sort of glue it around the bottom edge and use the tissue to glue around the stem. I also cut out a few leaves from the tissue paper, folded a few veins into the leaves, and I glued those onto the stem. You can get a more natural looking leaf by mixing your own colors and using the watercolors to paint the coffee filters. This is what the coffee filter painted looks like compared to the tissue paper. The tissue paper is on the left and the coffee filter painted with watercolors on the right. And after putting these in a nice vase, I get a sunny variety of sunflowers for my table. Thank you all for continuing to pray for and give to the victims of Hurricanes Harvey, Irma, and now Maria that's devastated Puerto Rico. And let's not forget about the earthquake in Mexico. Our neighbors continue to need our help now more than ever. Follow me on Facebook, Pinterest, Instagram, and Snapchat at Your Hustle Home and Your Hustle Home TV for daily home, food, and gardening tips.